500 years ago, he washed ashore the sole survivor of a shipwreck. And upon the skull of the man who killed his dad, he said, "I'm mad, I must eradicate piracy, injustice and cruelty, and all my sons will follow."
G'day, this is X-Band the Phantom Podcast. Our website is chroniclechamber.com and you can subscribe to our podcast via YouTube or through your favourite podcast apps. Today we will be chatting with Pidde Andersson, who is the most credited Frew Australian writer who, funny enough, lives in Sweden. So, g'day Stephen, how are you, mate?
I'm good, Jermaine, and yourself?
Yeah, sorry mate.
Just got a frog in your throat there, dude.
Yeah, I'm battling the man flu. I'm tested for COVID. I don't have it. Just the ordinary man flu. But I put together a bed for my daughter and rearranged a room. So I think I've powered on quite well, and I think I deserve a medal for persevering through the man flu. And all the blokes knows just how bad that is.
You're at death's door. Well done.
Yeah, that's it. So no, it's good to have you. I'm looking forward to tonight. It should be good. Peter, how are you, sir?
G'day. Well, I've been practicing saying prawn instead of shrimp all week. So prawn.
Yes. So do you know the difference between a prawn and a shrimp now?
No, because Barb is complaining all the time. She doesn't like having shrimps thrown at her.
So all the Australians will know that it's a prawn on the barbie and not a shrimp on the barbie, even though Crocodile Dundee says otherwise. If that just goes over everyone's head, just Google, and you will learn about that. So welcome, Peter. Now, before we go any further, we have to make sure that whether I have actually pronounced your name correctly or whether I've butchered it, and I've butchered it for the past 100 podcasts. So for those...
You may have noticed I've actually mentioned his name yet, so I was waiting for you to butcher it.
So this is a Chronicle Chamber tradition where we, even though we've got an English teacher on the podcast normally, he still doesn't know how to say certain words. So could you, for the record, let us know how to say your name?
Well, it's spelled Pidde Andersson, but it's pronounced throat wobbler mangrove. No, it's Pidde Andersson, but it's just my nickname, actually. It's not Pidde, it's not my real name, but that's what everybody's been calling me for 5 years.
Okay, cool.
15 years. I'm only 25. So.
So what is your actual first name then, Pidde?
Peter.
Peter.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can say Peter.
Does Pidde have an English translation? Or is it just a short form of Pete?
No, it's just what people call it, Peter, Petter, Peder. In my region where I come from, in the very south, people were often called Pidde.
Yeah.
So, no, I don't know.
Stuck.
Yeah, no, it's interesting.
No, it's good because 30 years ago or 25 years ago, I had an editor called Pidde Andersson, and he sometimes got my salary by mistake.
Oh, no.
I went with my nickname.
Just to get some clarification there.
Awesome. So, welcome. To start us off, you've kind of given us a bit of a clue about your age. Could you just tell us a little bit about yourself, your age or your age range? And then just your history and I guess just where you grew up, how you grew up, the comics that you grew up with, and then we can just kind of go from there.
All right, this is a 3-hour monologue.
In a minute or two.
Yeah, all right. Age range. Well, I'm closer to 60 than to 40.
Yep.
Sort of. And I'm kind of like 45, but the other way around.
Fair enough. So did you always grow up with comics?
Yeah.
And you grew up in Sweden as well?
Yeah, I drew my first comic books when I was like 5, 4. And I did it in preschool. I used to take 4 sheets of paper, fold them together to A6 size comic books. Just drew comics, mainly violent comics, of course. Just cowboys versus dinosaurs versus musketeers and medieval knights. And I learned reading thanks to Swedish Mad magazine when I was 5. So I could read when I began school in 1975, first grade. And Mad magazine was a huge influence to me when I was a kid. And then in the 70s, I read Tintin, of course, the Franco-Belgian stuff, and Batman, everything. There were loads of comics back then, so I read them all, except for the horror comics, which I wasn't allowed to buy. So buy them now instead.
So the kind of interesting thing is you've made a couple of stories with horror themes in them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was always fascinated by horror, and I loved it. I saw the covers of the newsagent. I was always looking at them. I want to get one someday. And then someday I actually bought it 4 or 5 years later, but still. Now I have it. I wanted this when I was a kid, but now I have it. And then when I was like 6 or 7, someone gave me this one.
Oh, wow.
This is the 1972 Phantom Christmas special. 1973 here, but published 1972. And this was the very first Phantom publication I read.
It's in good nick there. You looked after it.
Sorry?
It's in good condition. You've looked after it well.
No, I bought it 2 weeks ago.
Oh.
So what was it about you read this, you got the comic, did it capture you, or was it not until later, or?
It wasn't until a couple of years later, but I remember when I read this, I thought the cover, which of course was like a horror comic cover, I thought this was extremely scary. The Green Witch. And this story about the, where is it? The Gula Gula Witch, which I thought it was, I found it scary when I was like 5, 6 years old. And today is just a silly story, actually. But I found it scary when I was 5, 6. And then in 1976, I bought my first issue of Fantomen, the regular comic, number 18, 1970. Vultures.
And that was the glory years of Fantomen
Yeah, and that story grabbed really the darkness and the tone of it.
So darkness has followed you from a young age, then, and it has continued until now.
Darkness and humor.
Well, and that's probably the thing that's because we'll go into specific stories later, but Jungle Love is just captured me with just that humorous side of it. And then even you've got the horror style comics stories that you've created, but even in the horror ones, there's always that almost a slapstick style humor, which I guess comes from the Mad influence as well.
Yeah, I think horror should be fun, like a roller coaster ride. It shouldn't be like all gruesome horror, because that's not enjoyable. So the horror can be extremely gruesome and horrifying, but you need something to lighten it up, make characters more humane and human and likable. And normal people in real life make jokes.
It's a coping
We
mechanism.
talk right now. We crack jokes every now and then because that's what people do. And if you don't do that in a story, if characters don't do that, behave like normal people, it gets pretty bad, tedious, or maybe just too dark to be fun and enjoyable.
So were you always a writer? Like, did you always write, or did you have a career before you?
I wanted to be an artist. I was drawing. Until the late 80s, early 90s when I gave up. My plan in the 1980s was after graduating, I wanted to go to the Joe Kubert School in USA. This big famous comic book artist school. And then I realized it way too expensive. And then I got a job at Semic writing the humor comics.
And so you've been doing that since the 90s?
Writing for Semic, writing scripts. I sold my first script to Semic in 1989.
Oh, wow.
For Åsen is a humor comic. And and I'm still writing the same comic.
That's a long
No,
stretch.
well, I had a very long break in the 90s. The jobs writing comics in the 90s got tough. And I think I lost a couple of jobs in the 90s. So instead, I started writing about movies. So I became a movie critic, journalist, columnist in 1993. I wrote for newspapers, like that. So I mainly worked with movies until my comeback at Egmont in 2015, I think.
Okay.
I did do a little bit of research, and I saw there was a movie. Is it called Frostbitten? Was it a Swedish zombie or a Swedish? I forgot what it was.
It's a vampire movie.
Vampire. That's what I meant to say. Yeah. I haven't, of course, seen it. I just saw it when I did a bit of a Google on you and found this movie. Oh, he writes movies as well.
I was the script doctor on it, so I rewrote the screenplay for it.
Okay.
It should be available in Australia, I think.
Find it on a streaming service somewhere.
Yeah, probably. It's out on DVD and Blu-ray all over the world, so it's sold like 40, 50 countries, I think.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
It had a decent budget.
Yeah.
Shot on 35.
What was that experience like? Was it nice doing that, or was it just a job?
Well, the company was run by friends of mine, so I was part of the company for a short while, and it was fun. I think the plan was to go ahead and make more movies, for me to write more movies, and I tried to write a few more movies, but nothing ever happened. So let's see what happens in the future. Maybe we make a movie again. I don't know.
And so you went back to Egmont, which took over Semic. And is that when you started writing for? Is it 91? How do you say it in Swedish? Is it 91?
91.
91. Yeah, that's the one.
91. Private number 91.
So is that when you started writing for them and that?
Yeah, because what happened was that a couple of old friends of mine, here it is, 91. A couple of friends of mine had become the new editors, and they asked me to come back and write it. And so I did, and I suddenly went from writing almost no comics at all to writing a lot. So I'm writing a lot more comics now than I did when I started out. And I used to be extremely productive in the 90s. That's how I remember it. But I think I'm more productive now. It's more fun now to write for Egmont. The new editors, my friends, they're extremely enthusiastic, and the huge comic fans. They know a lot, and it's fun. It's fun writing this stuff.
No, that's good.
Well, that's good to hear. So you've been with Egmont for a number of years now, but we probably, or us here in Australia, know you more from your work with Frew. That's been going for the last few years. How do you find working with Frew? Well, how did you end up getting the gig with Frew, I should ask first?
Thanks to Andreas, the new Phantom editor. Maybe we should explain who Andreas is to those who came in late. Andreas Eriksson, the editor of Fantomen in Sweden. I tried writing the Phantom several times during the last 20, 30 years. I was in touch with Ulf Granberg 20 years ago. And I sent, I think it was like 15 years ago, I sent a synopsis to Ulf Granberg called Shangri-La.
Ah.
And he wrote back and said, well, thank you. I read it when I have the time. And last time I met Ulf, I think it was just before the pandemic, I said, you never commented on my synopsis. What did you think? It was like 15 years later. And then I wrote a couple of stories that I sent to Mikael Sol over after Ulf. And he never replied to my emails. And then I spoke to Andreas, who said that Frew has a new crew, new editors, and they're looking for a new original material. So I sent a message to Glenn Ford via Messenger on Facebook, and he replied within minutes. Just wrote, nice, send them over. So I translated 2 or 3 synopses I had lying around and sent them to Glenn, and he said, good. Go ahead.
It's like a total contrast. You know, you couldn't get anyone, you couldn't get an answer for, well, it was about 30, 40 years. And then within minutes, 3-4 minutes, you got, you know, sold, send them over.
There was one story he didn't buy. There was one Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde story because it was too similar to some other project Frew had in the making.
So
but the other one was, yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to say, of those synopses, there was Shangri-La. Was there any other synopsis that we've actually seen that's been published?
It was Shangri-La, and it was the Jekyll and Hyde, and I don't remember it. Maybe it was just 2. Okay. What is it, like 2017? It's 5 years ago. So can't remember.
Well, since then we've seen your work in, I think I've counted 14 issues from Frew. And I think it's about 9. Like there's been 1 2-parter, 2 3-parters. Well, I think the current French one is, well, we've had 3 parts of it, and so I think that's 9 stories altogether. Which is, you know, I think that's pretty good after just sending off a little message on Facebook to say, oh, I've got some work here.
Yeah.
But something I found interesting, though, is of those stories that you've written, the 19th Phantom seems to get a lot of Guernseys. You seem to write a lot of stories for the 19th Phantom. Is it something about the 19th Phantom in particular, or the era that he's based in that draws you to writing stories?
It's the era, yeah. Definitely. Because now I'm very fascinated by that period of time, you know, the architecture, especially in Europe, and this new 6-parter, the Belle Epoque. That is like my, how should I put it, my love letter to things I really like. It's like, you know, old French pop culture and French culture in general, and comics alike, and French comic artists I like. This was my way to make a Jacques. I disappeared.
I don't know. Sorry, I'm just for those who are who are on YouTube, as we talk, we're just going to be flicking through some of his stories.
So this
All
is
right.
in Paris.
You just want black, so okay. All right, now this was my way to make something in the vein of Jacques Paradis and things I grew up loving.
Mm.
And what's great about the Phantom, it's like the Phantom has been around since 1536. So you can tell stories from 500 years ago, and you don't need a time machine. You can just pick an era or place you're interested in and just figure out a way to put the Phantom.
The thing that I like about these stories is that we're filling in gaps about that Phantom. We're getting 6 stories, and then we've also had the Outlaws story, which was before as well. So it's like we're really getting an understanding of how this Phantom thinks.
Yeah.
And I really like how you're focusing, whether it's by design, by accident, or whatever. But I really like how you're focusing on specific Phantoms. Like in reading these stories, we know that this Phantom has a little bit of a funny side. He watches his wife eat snails, and
Yeah.
and it's just like he's a bit cheeky, but it's you're adding to the lore of the Phantom. I really like it.
Well, the Lee Fawkes Phantom in the 30s and 40s was pretty funny, I think. And I want to bring back that. And also, the Phantom is a rather two-dimensional character.
Yeah.
And one way to make him a bit more three-dimensional is to give him a great sense of humor. And also, we don't know anything at all about his wives from back then. Almost nothing. They're just some women who are there. So I try to give them some kind of character as well.
Mm. You did that with was it the 20th Phantom's wife as well? Like I think it was at the end of Inked in Blood, where they went shopping, and and it's just a little bit, it's just a little bit, but it means you're able to know a little bit more about it.
It humanizes them.
Yeah, it humanizes them. I think it was the second, or was it the third part of this story where she actually rescues the Phantom. And it was just, it really did.
In the Belle Epoque,
Yeah.
In the third. But I think we were first introduced to your 19th Phantom in Requiem, in the story of Requiem, which was in our annual back in, it was in our war annual.
This one.
That one, the one that you're holding up there. And I saw that recently, it was recently published, was it last year, over in Sweden?
Yes,
got third place in the story of the year?
Yes. Well, actually second place, because...
Second?
No, it was the third place, but I like to think of it as second place, because first place was that devil story again. No, the story of devil. And that doesn't count. So.
That's right. Yeah, that's
So this story really captured my imagination. I've actually got some original pieces of this story in my collection. It just captured me. We're looking at it now. Again, if you're on YouTube, you'll be able to see the Swedish version of this, which again was published in black and white. You did a great job with this, and Wendell did a great job as well.
Sorry, what was that?
Sorry.
No, I was pouring a cup of coffee. It sounded like I was taking a leak. I really enjoyed this story. Was there anything particular about this story that, where did this story come from, or was it again the era? Once again, it was kind of inspired by Jacques Tardy, the French master artist, who's made a lot of World War One comics. And it was also inspired by the last episode of Blackadder, the British sitcom.
That is one of the best episodes ever on TV.
Yeah. Which is very dark and sad and gripping. And also it was inspired by, it's about the vultures. And that first Phantom story, I read Vultures over Bakul.
Oh, yes.
It's such a huge impression on me. So I wanted to do something really dark with the vultures.
Yeah, well, you succeeded in this one.
Yeah, you did that all right.
Just like this guy, just this scene here where in the Requiem, it's on page 14 in the Fantomen issue. They massacre the half the village, and then he sits down and plays the piano. It's just it's kind of morbid, that little bit.
Well, that's what bad guys do.
Yeah, I also
usually an organ, a huge organ, church organ, while they laugh.
Yeah.
I also like how it covers the Aeronaut, the daily story of the 19th Phantom as well. So again, it mirrors up with that. And for me, that just shows that it shows care in your writing style, but it also shows that you get the Phantom and you understand the importance of adding to what's come before you. And I think we see that with this, but we also see it with your Saga of the Vultures story, where you've created the origin of the Vultures.
I always do a lot of research when I do the story, and when it comes to the Phantom himself, I usually talk to Andreas, who's he's a real expert. He knows exactly when and where and what about the Phantoms. So I really try to find spots on the timeline where I can put the Phantom.
Yeah.
And then I do do research for a long time when it comes to object.
So what's it been like working for Frew?
It's nice. It's they're nice people. I usually only have contact with Glenn. So Glenn is a cool guy. And Glenn knows the Phantom as well. And that's important. You really know the Phantom, what it is and what it's not. And the problem with most American Phantom books, it's like the people who made them didn't seem to know who the Phantom was. Yes. They just made him like Tarzan in tights or...
Yeah.
Or Batman in the jungle.
Yeah.
Seems to be the critique we hear a lot from people. Yeah, when they talk about the American authors, is always it's one of those two things.
One thing that is important to remember, I think, is that the Phantom is not an action comic; it's an adventure comic. And the American artists sometimes talk; they want more action. They want page after page on the action and chases, and that's not the Phantom to me, because Phantom is should have a solid story, a mystery to solve, or something like that. And I try to.
See, I think the Phantom can do action, but I think he should be more than just action. And I like when you use the word mystery or detective or whatever. He's more than just an action hero. I do like that. I do get that in your stories as well. Whether it's even the horror stories like what was that horror? Evil Lurks. Was it Evil Lurks in the Night? Which has got the cannibals. That was one of the more horrific stories I've ever read, I think. But he had to it wasn't just solving the case. There was more to it than that. So yeah. So when you've got an idea, how do you present that to Frew? Do you present it to them as a synopsis, or is that like a half-page idea, or is it a line idea? How do you interact with Frew to be able to get your story from your idea to being published in a comic?
Well, sometimes it's just a line or two I sent to Glenn. Like, hey, Glenn, what about Sonny B? The Scottish cannibal. That's good. Develop it. But most of the times I send them a synopsis, and they're usually a page and a half. But the latest one, the one story I'm writing right now, I think the synopsis is 6 pages.
Oh, wow.
Which is more a treatment than a synopsis. But then this story will turn into a 2 or 3 part. I haven't decided.
Okay.
I'm letting the story take its time and see what happens.
So, for us uneducated, what's the difference between a synopsis and a treatment?
A treatment is more of a movie term. A synopsis is like the very short version of page, and a screenplay or the full script, like when it comes to a movie, it's like 120 pages or something like that.
Yeah.
And a treatment is a more detailed synopsis, like maybe 10 pages.
Okay. Well, you learn something new every day.
But people usually don't do treatments for comics.
Yeah.
But in this case, I wanted to add things so I wouldn't forget. So I put them in the synopsis, and it became rather long.
I kind of get the feeling from some of your stories that you do like your multi-part stories.
Yes, I do. Of course.
Okay. So going back to the other question. So you write your synopsis. Glenn approves it. Do you get any say in kind of like the type of artist you want, or does he suggest any to you? Or
maybe I should add that after Glenn approves it, KFS needs to approve it.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
And then it's back to me. But sometimes I have a saying when it comes to the artist, and it's good if I know which artist it is, because if I do know who's going to draw it, write it especially for him. Like I did with the 2 stories by Joan Boix.
Yeah. So could you elaborate on that? How did you make it more darker because Joan Boix's style lends itself more to that, or?
Well, Glenn asked me to write a vampire story for Joan Boix, so I was like, yeah. And I had this idea about Vlad Tepes and Dracula, and other things. When I write, I see his art in my head, which makes it easy. And the story I'm writing right now is going to be drawn by Anthony Spay. So I picture his images in my head while writing.
Yeah.
And I know his strengths. So I try to put things the artists are good at drawing. On things they like drawing.
Yeah, that's very fascinating. Can you? So if I give you a name, could you let us know what you would write for that artist's strength? Like, let's say Anthony Spay, for example. Putting you on the spot here.
Yeah, well, Spay has a kind of a typical American superhero style, and he draws a very big, muscular phantom. But when he did the Vulture story, he was really good at drawing the village of the towns. And so in that way, he's kind of perfect for this new story I'm writing. And Joan Boix told me he likes to draw old trees and crumbling buildings. So what? I put some, old scary-looking trees and crumbling buildings in it.
Yeah. The Nest of the Undead, that was the one that ended on the cliffhanger where you weren't sure whether he really was. Yeah. I really liked the ending of that one. Do you remember that one, Steve?
Is that the Scottish cannibal? No, the Evil Lurks in the Night was Scottish cannibal. That was the. Is that Vlad?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Yes, I do remember that one. I did enjoy that one.
This one.
Yes. Vlad the Impaler, and then ended up getting empowered at the end. Oh, sorry for anyone who hasn't read it.
And then they ran away.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can find it. No, I don't have a copy of that one on my computer. But yeah, that's interesting. How I really find it fascinating how you can tailor your script in a sense to be able to play at the strengths of. So do you just want to show us again? I've just pinned you so that way the viewers should, if you're on YouTube, you'll be able to see this again. Yeah. No. Yeah.
Rock, shuck.
Bye.
But
like Mortal Kombat.
Yeah. No, I really appreciate that little bit of an insight there, Peter. So you've done stories with a few different artists. We've got Todoro, Foley, Cavallanti, Boix, Paulos, Dantas, and Spay, and then now Okra. That's a wide range of different artists. Do you have like a favorite who you enjoyed collaborating together? Because a lot of the artists that I've talked to who have done stories for you, they've said that you're very, you like to communicate with them as they're drawing it, and you're very open in communication with them, and it's like a like a marriage in the sense that you really work together to do the story. Do you have like a favorite artist that you've worked with so far?
Well, I don't think you should mention that now because that's rude to the others.
All right. Yeah. Okay. It probably is, but
it probably
doesn't make good for a podcast if you don't answer the questions, though.
But one thing we did, which was pretty interesting, I did a story with the Giancarlo. Oh, I can't recall his last name. The Italian guy who did the Frankenstein graphic novel. Giancarlo
Cardoza. Yeah, I know the one.
We know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
Well, Giancarlo and I, we did a story that takes place at the Le Mans Saint-Michel in France back in the 18th century, I think. And Giancarlo sent me the pencil pages before he inked them. So Glenn and I approved the layouts and the pencils before he inked them. And when it comes to researching a story, I actually got hold of British woman working for the tourist agency at Le Mans Saint-Michel in France. So I sent her the pencil pages just to check them if the details are correct. And so she did a little notes on the pencil, on the sketches. I wrote, no, this tower wasn't there 300 years ago, so it looked like this. And she sent me some old painting. And then we sent it all back to Giancarlo, who corrected it to make it look like it really did in the 1700s.
Yeah, I love hearing stories like that. Just like just the stories that when we read a comic, we take it for granted, but hearing about you know, the care that the artists and the creatives has taken, the history, it really adds to the story. So, you know, do you know when that story is going to come out?
No idea, but it will be full color. It was colored by Giancarlo's daughter, and sometime soon, I think. It was finished last year, so it's been ready for a long time.
Oh. So
Well, that's still quite short in, if this is Frew, that's still quite short in Frew's back catalogue. We've heard that there's a few stories that they're sitting on that they've had.
Excuse me, just had a notification here. There's a football game going on, so I'm just going to check. There was a goal right now.
did your team score?
Yes, yeah, they did. They scored.
On that same vein, the team that I barrack for beat the team that Dan barracks for today. So I'm pretty happy.
Is that why he didn't come on?
And Dan's not here for me to crow to him about.
So one of the stories that really spoke to me and spoke to a lot of fans, it seems, was the Jungle Love story.
Yeah, and working with Shane is great. Shane is a really great guy. And we did the same thing there, I think. Shane sent me the pencil pages, and we went through them, and well, we did it all together, I think.
So was it you that put in all the Easter eggs, or was it pretty much Shane that just kind of?
No, it was Shane. It was Shane.
Mm.
It was a nice touch. I really liked that. You should claim credit for it.
Well, I put stuff in other comics, so in other stories, like in the second part of the Belle Epoque, the one that ends in Venice. There's like the Italian comic book hero, Corto Maltese, sitting there in the background, and that's to my credit.
Hmm. Well, just if you're on YouTube, you'll just see. Now, did I remember something about that you did another Captain Congo story or something?
Yeah, Shane and we did another Captain Congo story, which is it's finished. It's been finished for several years, and just hoping they would publish someday. Where?
See, that's more of the story that we hear.
Yeah.
I have a page of it framed on my wall.
Of the Captain Congo?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So is it a phantom story, or is it kind of like something that will probably appear in their giant size comics?
Well, it's more like a Mad Magazine parody of Jungle Heroes.
Oh, okay.
It's I find it funny, and Shane thought it was hilarious. So I don't know. But they have stupid jokes, and the heroine, she's attacked by a lion, and she screams, "Help! Help! The Phantom!" And they say, "No, this is Congo." "Oh, help! Help! Tintin!"
I'm intrigued to read that now. Awesome. Yeah, no, I really enjoyed this story of Jungle Love. I thought, because that was with the sequel thing that Frew did for was it the 75th or the 80th anniversary? And I thought you really nailed the brief with that one. So do you have a favorite story?
Of the ones I've written, yeah, it's always it's usually the latest one. But I really liked Ink and Blood, because I've always been fascinated by the American comic book industry, especially horror comic industry in the 1950s, and the censorship thing going on. And so I really enjoyed doing Ink and Blood. It became a rather unique comic, not just not for being just a phantom comic. It's unique in general because of its. And then I really like Belly Pot Sweet. So you've read 3 parts now, right?
Yeah. So that's one with Percy. I'm really enjoying Percy's artwork as well. I was a huge Caesar Spadero fan growing up on Phantom, so I get a lot of nostalgia reading that story because there's a lot of heavy influence from him, and I thought it matches your writing as well. So I've been enjoying it.
Glenn sent me the 6th part the other day, so now I've read them all, and the 6th one is beautiful.
Oh wow!
It's very atmospheric, moody.
Looking forward to reading that.
Yeah. No. So that will all be out. In the next couple of months, I'm assuming. Also, the remaining 3 parts.
Well, I'm not the one to ask about that. Just ask Frew. I have no idea, but I've seen the covers for all the parts, and the last part has been lettered, so
cool.
Within soon. I'm sorry?
Yeah. That sounds promising.
Yeah.
I know we've in our reviews on the podcast we've enjoyed it. So Stephen, I'm going to ask you a question.
Ask me a question.
Of the various stories that Peter has worked on, do you have a favourite? What is that?
Yeah, hang on. I'll go back to the list so I don't. Well, when you were mentioning Inked in Blood, I do remember enjoying that, and having spoken to you now for the last half hour about your love of the horror, or you want to first read the horror comics and being and not allowed to, and then later having that love for them. I can see where Inked in Blood has got its genesis from, if you like. But I thought, I thought you hit it out of the park with Shangri-La. I thought that was I wasn't expecting much out of that story, and not because of what the story was. It was in the book that it was in. From memory, it was the Phantom's World, and it was, and I wasn't. Yeah, the Phantom's World didn't set the world on fire, unfortunately. But then you'd get these stories every now and then, which blew you away and really take you by surprise. And I remember Shangri-La being one of those stories, and I think that was a lot better than what I thought it was going to be. Jungle Love was a good fun, but every story in the Phantom Goes to War annual was brilliant, and Requiem, as we were just going through the art before Germ, just reminded us how good each one of those stories are. So your first 3 stories that we saw in Frew, I think, have been three of the best. If I'm going to be, if we've got to pick a couple, but I am enjoying this latest ones with the Phantom in Paris. I'm looking forward to reading the next 3 parts, and especially after you've just spoken about it. Then I did like you going back to the Vultures a few times, but I think a few other authors also gave us some Vultures. So that one probably goes down only because we got oversaturated with Vulture stories at the time. But on the whole, those first 3 stories, Shangri-La, there it is up there. And I've just lost my list.
Yeah, sorry.
That sounds silly and forget the name of the story I just mentioned a moment ago. Shangri-La, Jungle Love, and Requiem. Yes.
So this is the Shangri-La story. Again, the Phantom's drinking milk in this story.
Yeah.
I love it when he's drinking milk.
Well, he's actually drinking a White Russian in this story, but in a lot of stories, you really play on this whole milk drinking gag.
Of course.
Is there a reason for that? Is that because you think it's a bit ridiculous, or?
It is ridiculous, but that's what the Phantom does. It drinks milk, and people don't use it that much. You need to drink more milk. And I remember, I think it was like 15, 20 years ago, I was sitting in my hometown in a bar at the desk, sitting at the bar, and I was wearing my Phantom rings, the skull ring, and suddenly the bartender puts a glass of milk in front of me
Oh, that's
and,
awesome.
and says, "It's from the man over there," and points. And then it was like a guy I knew who was sitting in a corner in the back.
That is classic. That's awesome. I love that story. So this is a question we actually asked Matt Kime in the last podcast. Do you think the Phantom should be allowed to have a wine with his wife in the Skull Cave?
Well, you should have a what?
Should be able to have a wine with his
A
wife,
wine.
with his wife in the Skull Cave, or should he just stick to milk?
You should stick to. It should stick to milk, water, fruit juice, whatever that's not alcoholic. That's what it does. It's like having the Phantom drinking wine. It's against his character.
I agree. I fully support that.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Jim?
I will admit, I love there was a scene in, I think it was the first Bella Epoch series where he's drinking the milk halfway through the fight scene. And then was it in the first one
Popeye
also?
with his spinach.
Yeah. There's also in the first one where his wife's, they're sitting at the table and they're ordering a drink. And he's about to order, the Phantom's about to order a milk. And then his wife goes, "No, you will not have a milk. I'm over you having a glass of milk." And it's a cool avenue to be able to have a bit of fun with the Phantom. And I think the more I've read these stories, and then seeing that again in the Shangri-La story, which we were flicking through before as Steve was talking about it, it's kind of made me realize just how much I do like that. I was almost warming to, you could probably have a wine, but after tonight, I'm firmly on the milks on the milk side of the fence again. It has to be milk.
Well, personally, I haven't had a glass of milk in over 30 years, I think. we always had
It's
milk.
a rarity, isn't it?
We always had milk with dinner when I grew up. We did that in Sweden in the 70s, 80s. And I realized, why are you doing this? I don't like it. Like, I prefer a glass of water.
Yeah.
And
And what about you, Jim? You asked me to name my favourite story, and I brought it down to 3. What about yourself?
So mine would have to be Requiem again. I really enjoyed that story. It was a great. I think you and Wendell worked really well together. Well, from a reader's point of view, I think you worked well. I'm not sure what it was like actually in real life, but
we were fighting all the time.
Yeah,
still got the bruises, mate.
Yeah.
But I thought it worked really well. It was a great representation of what war was really like. You just didn't pull any punches. Like there's the scene of the Phantom about to be pulled apart by 4 horses. Like I said, there was a scene where the vultures massacred half the village, and then he sits down and plays Mozart or something on the piano. And then there was great secondary characters as well. Like there was the boys that saved the day. There was the bad guy who looked German, or who was the vulture with the big beard and stuff like that. I just thought it had all the elements, and I really liked it. And then the other ones will probably be the Vultures' origin story. I love the Vultures. I enjoyed the saturation of the Vultures at the start, the first 6 months of last year, and I really enjoyed the origin story. It was, and then there was that girl at the end as well. That's another thing that I've noticed with your stories, which I'll get to in a second. But I really enjoyed the origin of the vultures. So they're probably my top two.
Thank you.
So I'll have to say in what probably all of your stories, maybe bar your first couple, you've really left the door open for follow-up stories. There's there's the prologues, there's the, you know, whether it was the Vlad, the impaler being impaled and then the Phantom goes down to get the body and then there's no body, or whether it's the guy out of the Outlaws. Who were the Outlaws? I can't remember them at the top of my head. The two guys who changed their face and then they bump into the Phantom too.
Bruce Cassidy and Sundance Kid.
Yeah, so, you know, there's in a lot of your stories, you seem to open, there's the cat burglars in Bella Epoch #2, I think it was. In all of these stories, there seems to be...
I'm writing a sequel to that one right now.
Okay. So is that by design, where you kind of like, well, you know, I'm not going to tie everything up because I want to write sequels, I want to write more stories?
I want to write a story taking place in Venice, and that story ends in Venice. And also, I liked the cat burglars, the Shah and his wife or girlfriend. So, having characters you enjoy writing about.
It's a good author trick to keep him employed, you see. If you don't tie the ends up, you've always got room to write a sequel.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and it's good to see the Phantom not always wrapping everything up in a nice bow. You know, we all love Lee Falk. He did a great story. He did a great job and stuff like that. But too often it was kind of like, it was very samey. It was like, capture the bad guy and then he kisses Diana in the jungle or at the last panel. It's becomes a bit cliche at times, where I enjoyed, like, you know, the Phantom puts him in jail and then he goes spend some time with his wife and then, you know, hold and behold, they've escaped. It's I like it.
I stopped reading The Phantom in 1981. I stopped buying the comic in 81 because the stories were all like Diana kidnapped, Rex kidnapped, Gaga kidnapped, Zzz kidnapped, and I don't know, it was the same stories all the time, and it got so boring. And you could tell that Lee Falk didn't have his heart in it anymore. Just did it. And,
yeah. So will we see a story with his?
No, he's been kidnapped. So you won't.
Hasn't found him yet.
So hers has got to go looking for him.
Hers is a female Avenger story starring hers.
What about Steggy? Are we going to see any stories with Steggy?
No, he's on rehab, I think. He drank that wine Diana had bought, and the Phantom hid the wine somewhere, and Steggy found it, drank it, and then tragic story.
Classic.
When it comes to Shangri-La, by the way, since you were talking about Shangri-La, I had to change the premises for that story quite a lot before I wrote the script. Because the original story, the synopsis, took place in 1932. And it was all supposed to be like a typical matinee adventure type of story from the 1930s. However, then I had to make it a follow-up to the story that I forgot his name.
Angela Todero.
Angelo, of course. Angelo had written a story himself that took place in China in modern day. And so I had to update my story so it takes place today, which made it all more problematic. Because in the original version, the Phantom and the bad guys just walk onto an old airplane somewhere in China and take off. But now we need to have this modern day airport, with security and passports and things like that, which made it more complicated.
But you got to insert the White Russian joke.
Yeah, I did.
So there's the payoff.
Yeah.
So was it a bit of a thrill to see your stories appear in Fantomen, in the Fantomen magazine?
Yes. It's pretty amazing to see it. You know, what is like almost 50 years later, what is 46 years later. I could never imagine that when I bought that issue in 1976 that I one day should write stories about this character.
Mm.
And I haven't published in this comic
You've gone
book.
You've gone the long way.
Yeah. And what's even more cool is that this year's Swedish Christmas album was out sometime in I don't know, September, October, I think. It will have Shangri-La in it in full color, and they always have this reprint of an old album, and this year it's this one.
Oh wow. That is cool.
That's gonna make you happy.
In that Christmas album this year, it's my first Phantom story plus the first Phantom publication I read.
Yeah. No, that is very cool. You could not have scripted that any better.
Well, I did script it.
So do you have any Team Fantomen stories in the works, or are you solely on Team Frew?
Well, there was one story I wrote for Frew, but Glenn thought it was much like another Frew project. So, well, I sent it to Andreas. So let's see what happens.
Okay.
Because Glenn thought the story was good, and I think Andreas thinks it's good as well. It was just like I had another project similar. Let's see what happens.
Yeah. Well, it'll be good. So, will the Shangri-La story, is that going to be coloured?
Yes.
Awesome. That would be nice. I've seen some of the work that the colouring team does, and they do some really good work.
Yeah, they do. I began buying the Phantom again in the late 80s when I realized they had a new artist and writers such as Klaus and Hans and people like that. And then when it turned to color, I stopped buying it again because, face it, looked like shit. Those early, the coloring was terrible, so I stopped buying it again. But now, since last years, I think Repostugan, their coloring is great. I think,
Yeah, I've seen some of them, even some of the stories that they've done of George Bess, and when he originally done them in black and white, and they've coloured some of those stories, they've looked really well as well.
Yeah, that kind of works. Valve looks a bit strange, I think.
Yeah.
Valve, his style was so black and white.
Mm.
So it's really, it's all based on blacks.
Yeah.
And but then I think the Phantom is a black and white comic. And the whole atmosphere kind of disappears in color, I think. And what people don't think of, it's like the Phantom himself, his suit, like in Scandinavia where it's blue, it's like a traffic light walking around in the jungle, sneaking around in the darkness. Here comes this big blue and red traffic light. Woo!
Do you know if Fantomen are reprinting any of the other stories? Will they be doing the Vulture saga or anything like that?
And they would do the Vulture saga, and the Outlaws is coming up very soon.
Oh, nice.
I've translated it, so I think it's better to be color right now. And,
okay.
Yeah. And the Vultures will be in color as well.
Oh, I'll look forward to that. Does Andreas know Rafael Dantas' correct name?
Yes, I actually asked Andreas yesterday. Did you spell it right? We did write the correct name.
So for those who don't know, the Outlaws Story, which was, I can't remember at the top of my head what Frew story it was, but they've
1877.
Yeah, something about that. They got the wrong.
That's right.
Yeah. Do you just want to show us again, sir?
1877.
Look at that, Steve. Well done.
You think I was looking at
Pro. I'm prepared. I came prepared.
Yeah. I think it was Dudley put the wrong artist on there. So, and it was his first story as well, Paul Raphael. I really enjoyed his work on that story.
Rafael Lopez.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, he's from South America. It's like, oh,
Poor bloke. So it's good that Andreas has got that right. So with that story and the Vulture story in color, have you seen the Vultures? Have you seen any panels or the Vulture story in color?
no.
But you've seen the Outlaws.
They haven't started working on it.
Okay.
I just know that they're going to run it. I don't know when.
Yeah.
Andreas just told me, but I've seen Shangri-La in color, and it looks really good in color.
Does it look better in color or black and white, in your opinion?
It looks better in color.
Okay.
I must say.
And what about Outlaws? Have you seen any of that?
No, I haven't seen it.
Okay.
I think Andreas sent it to the colorist
Okay.
yesterday.
Stephen, I've got a couple of creator type of questions I want to ask. Do you have any more questions about his stories?
Probably not about ones that have gone past. I'm just thinking about, what about in the future? Have you got any stories in your head that you'd really like to write? Are we going to see more of the 19th? Are we going to see more historical phantoms, or will we get a modern day phantom? Because you've only, like, from what I've read, you've only done 2 stories that got the 21st phantom and a whole plethora that got older phantoms in there. Will we see any modern day phantom stories in the future?
Yes, I have written 2 modern day phantom stories, I think. And but the thing is, it's so much easier to write the pastime phantoms, the historical phantom story, because the phantom as a character works a lot better in the past. There's so much today you have to think about when you write, like the air, for instance, and the whole thing about living in a cave in the jungle. Like, everybody should be able to find that cave today using modern technology. And there's so much that really doesn't work. However, the Phantom is perfect for the 1800s, early 1900s. And, so most of my stories will be about the Phantoms. Also, I like to choose eras that I'm interested in, subjects I'm interested in personally. So places I enjoy. So
a few more of the 19th Phantom then.
Yeah. Maybe I should only write about the 9th Phantom. So he lived for 150 years. He's the reason we only have 21 Phantoms now, because the 19th lived for a very long time.
Oh, Jim looks like he's focused there. He's got a story. He looks like he's got a question burning to ask.
Yeah. So that was one of the questions I wanted to ask. So that's good. So one of the questions that we've asked a couple of other creators the last couple of podcasts we've done is, as a creator, do you think the 21st Phantom should die? Should we pass on the mantle to the 22nd Phantom, or should he always be the 21st Phantom?
Well, they did jump from the 20th to the 21st. What was it, late 70s or late something? The 20th. the 20th Phantom became the 21st suddenly.
Not in the
Yeah.
newspaper, not over here. It's always been 21 for the last.
I was reading some old Phantom comics from 1974 the other day, Swedish Phantom comics, and Ulf Dahlberg writes somewhere at, well, this is the 20th Phantom. So he was the 20th Phantom in 1975, 1974.
Yeah,
They keep writing it in several issues. This is the 20th Phantom. Our Phantom is the 20th. And then they skipped one Phantom and he became the 21st.
Okay, to be honest, I'm not sure about that one. I think from memory, there was once when Lee Falk wrote that it was the 16th Phantom. And then I'm pretty sure it was from about the 50s or the 60s that Lee Falk wrote that it was the 21st Phantom. So there might have been, I don't know, it might have changed it in Sweden. But would you like to see the passing of the mantle so that way all the timelines and everything makes sense, or are you happy it always being the current Phantom?
I haven't given it that much thought, but if I were to take over the King Peter strip, I think I would jump straight to the 23rd or 24th Phantom. Just skip everything. So he's got a new wife and a same skull cave, but a new gang of friends and relatives and whatever. Just to get it right.
Yeah.
So we don't have to think about all this. Start a fresh start over, a reboot taking place today with a number that makes sense. I don't know.
Comics aren't supposed to make sense.
They can make sense, but yeah, okay, fair enough.
No, the thing is, like, it does get problematic when you think about the Phantom timeline and when you try to write stories. So it would be good to like have it fixed in a way.
Yeah, I think it will make it more palatable and just easier. But that's just my opinion. I'm sure there's plenty out there that don't agree with us. And if you don't, make sure you hit us up on social media or email and you can be on the side of Steve.
Ulf fixed it back in the 1980s, I think.
Yeah.
Going back, yeah. And so, okay, finally, we have a good time. And then came New Fark and it just messed it up again.
Yeah. Yeah. And Elf was probably along the, lines of, yeah, you're right. I think he had it. And then they did the Year One saga, which was the Phantom doing it in the 70s, I think it was. But then, 20 years later, we've got the same problem.
Yeah.
So as a creator, I think we always, especially you, because it's, you get paid to do this. But so getting new fans into the Phantom is important. So again, this is another question that I've asked a few creators as well. Do you have any ideas or strategies or opinions on how, whether it's the publishers from a Team Fans or, from an Egmont Frew point of view or from a King Features point of view, but do you have any ideas on how we could get more fans and new fans, younger fans, into the Phantom?
I think it's pretty impossible. I have no idea what to do because sales are declining and I don't know what to do. Subscriptions went up during the pandemic in Sweden. But that was then. I don't know what to do because just face it, kids don't read comics.
Yeah.
No matter what it is. So I have no idea what to do.
That's a very doom and gloom answer to that one.
Yeah. No, I really don't know what to do because if kids did read comics, we don't even have any Marvel comics coming out in Sweden anymore. It's just a long time. Everybody
Oh, wow.
loves Spider-Man and the Marvel movies, but they don't read the comics. They don't even know they're based on comic books.
Mm.
So today, Marvel is just movies.
Yeah. Well, I think
Unfortunate.
I think it was in can't remember where I heard it, but now they're resetting the comic. From what I heard, resetting the comic books to kind of match what's happening in the movies. So, yeah.
And also, the Swedish word for comics is serious. And if you say serious today, people think you're talking about TV shows.
Mm.
So we have to call comics something else to make people understand what we're talking about. We can't just say serious, which has been comics for years or 75 years. And there's a Swedish pod called something like the serious nerds. And it's not about comics, it's about TV.
Yeah.
And it's all very strange.
I suppose even in our like a Supernova and our comic conventions over here, it's more about movies and TV shows than actually the comics.
Yeah, no, the same here.
Mm.
I haven't been to the Comic Cons because I find it kind of. I'm not interested in getting an autograph from some actor who played the right leg of a monster in the Tolkien movie or whatever it was, or some has-been that needs to sell autographs to survive. Which is basically what the Comic Cons are.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's no argument from me. I don't go there for the TV stars or that either.
I don't know who they are because I never watched TV shows.
Hmm. So, is there a Phantom that a past Phantom that does interest you that you wouldn't mind exploring at a later date?
I don't know. I haven't thought about that. The Phantoms themselves are rather similar, I think.
Yeah.
So it really doesn't matter which Phantom. It is the eras I'm interested in.
Okay. So what about a Lee Falk story or a Team Fantomen story, and there's been a hole left at it, and that you thought, I wouldn't mind exploring that a bit more, anything like that as well?
Well, if I find something, sometimes I look through the Phantom Wiki and try to find something that, if I find gaps in the timeline and see if I can come up with something for that. But I need a good story first. The story is the most important thing.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. Cool.
And I like really solid stories.
Hmm.
And what was good about the Swedish Phantom comic in the 70s and 80s was that you always got a 32-page Phantom story, often with 8 panels a page, which made it a really good, solid story.
Yeah.
And now it's 24 pages, and sometimes just 6 panels a page, which makes it well, it's not the same. It's not as...
Yeah, they're more simpler stories, I guess.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I hear what you're saying, because I really like the 32-page stories, but I was finding just before they went down to 24 that there seemed to be a lot of waffle. Like there was a lot of setup for the story to happen, then the story would happen, then there'll be a break, the debrief, if you like. Whereas now we just get the story and it's just crisp and clear. So I do see positives and pros and cons on both sides.
You need to adopt the story after the page count, of course. If you only have 24 pages, make a story you can tell at 24 pages.
Yeah.
Klaus had problems with that when they went from 32 to 22 and then 24, because his stories were still 32 pages. So you had to tell a 32-page story in 22 pages.
Yeah.
Which
But,
made them a bit messy, I think.
Yeah. And I think what was happening recently was the opposite, whereas, Klaus was having trouble getting 32 down to 22. People were having trouble trying to get, maybe used to writing 24 or 22 pages and spreading them out to 32. And so now they've ducked it back to, the 22, 24 page. But either way, I'd love to see a full 32-page story. I do enjoy that. And a proper, fully fleshed out story without any waffle. Yeah.
Well, I had a problem with Ink and Blood, which was supposed to be one 32-page story, and I had to cut it up into two.
Yeah, that's right.
24 or 22 page, I don't remember. So when I expanded it, it turned out that I got a couple of blank pages, because those 32 pages couldn't fill 44 pages or whatever it was. And that's why I have some action scenes that go on a little too long, because there was more story to tell. I had to expand certain sequences. So I had to make the action scenes longer.
That's a good question. So from what I understand, and I'm just a comic reader myself, you write more from a European style, and then you've dealt with Jason Paulos, Anthony Spay, that are more, I would probably say, more drawing from an American style, which are less panels and stuff like that. How's that gone? Do you have to simplify your writing, or do you have to hold their hand a little bit more so they know how to pace and place the panels better?
I wouldn't say that I'm writing in a European style, because I think the reason Team Fantomen stories have 8 panels a page is like when they edited the folk stories into the comic book, it turned out that way. So when they continued doing their own stories, they just try to make it look like they edited the folk story. And by myself, I haven't been reading comics from, I've read a lot of American comics growing up, so 5, 6 panels a page, that's nothing new to me. And the humor comics I write, like, here's the one I've written, 91, and they're just 5 or 6 panels a page. And when it comes to the comic book format, the traditional comic book format, 6 panels is, of course, easier to do. It often looks better with just 6 panels. While the traditional French Belgian format is, the large albums. They have 8 to 12 panels a page.
Yeah, I read a lot of Asterix and Tintin, so. Yeah.
And that was a problem when they ran, the backup comics in Fantomen, when it ran like Blueberry by Jean Giraud or the other French albums. There was like huge pages shrunk into the comic book format. So the panels were really tiny.
Yeah.
Need a magnifying glass to read it.
They do that sometimes with the Frew ones, and I don't like it.
And the same with they reprinted when the Swedish Phantom comic turned. There was some a few years ago when it turned 70 or whatever it was. They reprinted the first Phantom story, the very first, and they printed it that way. And the panels were extremely tiny. It took forever to read that story because a lot of dialogue, a lot of text, tiny panels.
Yeah.
Doesn't make for a fun experience, does it?
No, and a comic should be fun. I've really enjoyed chatting with you today or tonight, what time people are listening. I'm out of questions. Steve, you got any other questions you want to ask?
No, I'm tapped out.
Do you have anything that maybe you wish we'd asked, or you got any announcements or anything you want to like leave us with?
Well, I don't know, but the election in Australia brought back Glenn Lumsden to Facebook.
I haven't checked that. I've checked the election. I haven't checked Glenn Lumsden.
Yeah, he's a happy man, I think.
Now he wrote that he left Facebook because of the upcoming election. Because it made him too upset reading things on social media. But what was interesting is like since I began writing for Frew, I realized that I really don't know very much about Australia, or I didn't know very much about Australia, because Australia is something far away. It's like Mad Max country. That's all. They like ABBA and they like the Phantom. They make Mad Max movies.
Oh, we like IKEA as well.
Yeah, well,
and the Swedish meatballs.
Yeah.
I have a work colleague that goes to IKEA probably once a fortnight just for the Swedish meatballs.
Well, I'm surrounded by IKEA right now, actually.
But no, I really enjoy your time tonight. I've been enjoying your stories. I think you've added a lot to the character, like with the Recom stories. You've added depth to past Phantoms, especially like the 19th Phantom and stuff like that. I've really enjoyed it. Look forward to seeing more stories. I think you know your Phantom as well, which always helps. There's too many creators that don't know the character well enough. And I think seeing you know the character probably makes Glenn's job a little bit easier. So I'm sure he'll be thankful for that as well. Listeners, I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope you've learned something. I hope you've enjoyed learning more about the stories as well. If you want to learn more about us, our website is chroniclechamber.com. If you have any input you want to give us, you can either do that via email, which is chroniclechamber@gmail.com, or of course our social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We have started talking to Duncan about maybe he can be our dancing Phantom for TikTok, but we're still in negotiations about that one. If you
I've missed something there.
If you wanted to subscribe to us, you can via YouTube or your favorite podcast app like iTunes or Spotify. So thank you, listeners. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Steve, for joining us. From myself, happy Phantoming and stay safe.
Yep. Thanks for joining us, Pidde, and thank you for sharing your stories, particularly the story that you spoke about with Giancarlo, and the care to make sure that the stories and the artwork and the scenarios are authentic to the times, and that shows great care. Even if we're just a comic reader, just flicking the pages, it shows a great care for the craft, and we thank you very much for it.
Thank you.
The ghost who walks. Enemies beware. The Phantom's always there, but you won't find the Phantom.